preparation of what is to come. I will be spending next week with Yins and Nat downtown up in Pittsburgh in the Consol Energy Arena with the Yinzers and Nat. And wow, what a week we have ahead. Capitals and Penguins, it all starts on Thursday night. This guy has been chronicling the National Hockey League for over 2 decades. Hundreds of thousands of folks follow him out on Twitter, and you can too at ESPN_Burnside. Longtime ESPN NHL insider from his home in that great hockey hotbed of Atlanta, GA, where the Bandit once roamed. We welcome Scott Burnside on for his maiden voyage into this Stanley Cup journey. Dude, I need a towel. It's a good thing they're giving me a couple of days off here, bro. I was in Toronto. I need to cool down a little bit. I mean, this has been a white-hot Stanley Cup chase already. It's just been good all the way around, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that what you're seeing is the game played the way it should be played and why people should be following this sport nonstop. 18 overtime games in the first round, an NHL record, and no end of the drama from start to finish. And you talk about Toronto, Washington, and a series that from the outset I think people looked at. Obviously, the Capitals winning the President's Trophy for the second year in a row as the league's best regular season team. And on paper, you think the youthful Leafs, the second wildcard team, should have been easy pickings. But I never got a sense from the Capitals, and having been around this team a lot over the last decade or so since Alex Ovechkin came in the league, I really don't think that the Capitals took the Leafs lightly. But boy, they got everything they could handle and more. 6 straight one-goal games. 5 of them went to overtime, including the deciding game on Sunday night in Toronto. And what a great end for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think anyone expected they'd be in the playoffs necessarily at the start of the season, and to push a team like the Washington Capitals, really to, I know they didn't get to the Game 7, but this was very much a brink. They led 1-0 midway through the third period of Game 6. Looked like they were going to call the force of Game 7 back in Washington. It didn't happen that way as Marcus Johansson played the hero.
Scott, I'm not going to lie to you. It was 6 minutes left. I said to my wife, do you want to go to Game 7? I can buy a ticket right now. I said there's 6 minutes because when the game ends, the ticket prices are going to shoot up by $50. And I was online with 5 minutes left looking at a ticket for my wife. I mean, that's where we were. I wasn't that I was resigned to it. I was just doing my due diligence, bro, I'm wearing a Caps hat. I mean, I've been through it all. I mean, I was there Easter Eve in '87 with LaFontaine and Bob Mason and Kelly Rudy. Every time I see Kelly Rudy, when they travel through from Western Canada, he's reminded of that. It's been 30 years, and this Ovechkin era, and I know there's a lot of pressure on this team right now, and I guess going up to Toronto into that hellhole and seeing how much it matters up there and getting through that first round, Trotzy says it takes a piece out of you. I'm interested to see what that piece looks like over the next 5 to 7 days in a series that should need no ignition for either one of these teams. I mean, the Capitals never win this thing. This has to be the year that they slay the dragon, right?
Well, I like them to win the Cup. I'd like them all season to win the Cup. Of course, I like them to win the Cup last year, too. But I think you're right, and I think it'll be fascinating to watch how the Capitals regroup after this series. Like a year ago, they beat Philadelphia in the first round. The Flyers were not even close to them, and yet it took the Capitals seemingly forever to get the wheels turning. And by the time they got to the second round against Pittsburgh, so we've got this matchup, Crosby, Ovechkin, so much more than that. But this is 2 years in a row, third time ever since Crosby and Ovechkin came in the league. The Capitals were a step behind. My sense is that this team is already playing in the red line, right? That tack is already in the red line. The Penguins, man, they're so impressive. No Matt Murray, no Chris Letang, no Carl Hagelin. And they dispose of a very good, very tough Columbus Blue Jackets team in 5 games rather. And so they've been rested. They're going to get some players back. Chris Kunitz didn't play in the first round. He may be back to the second round. And the Capitals open at home, right? So they have games 1 and 2 at home. I think it's going to be fascinating to see who sets the tone, where is the speed, where is who pushes the pace. And I think, the Capitals are going to have to step into game 1 and be at that be at the ready. I mean, they can't afford to work themselves up for this series. I don't think they will, but they've been through a much more difficult first-round test than the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think it's going to be a terrific. This should be a classic. They always are when Crosby and Ovechkin are on the ice. There's so much buzz around these two teams. I think this is going to be a dynamic series. I still like the Capitals to win it. I think Braden Holtby showed in the latter stages of the series against Toronto, he's in Vezina Trophy form. He's going to have to win the goaltending battle. I think that's how close it's going to be. But I think he's capable of that, and I think this should be dynamite. I can't wait for it to start.
You've been covering this for a long, long time, Scott, and you've seen all of these coaches come through, going back to Schoenfeld, and Ovechkin coming in, and it looked like it was going to be Boudreau's era. He's now sat in a couple of different seats and, found himself once again ousted last week. But Trotz, I always say this, and, I don't have a long-standing relationship with you. I've known Trotz for 30 years. I like him so much, and it's such a weird space and time that he winds up coming back to Washington in this moment with this group of players. It was his choice to pick sort of what job he wanted when he hit the market. He's an unprecedented coach in that no other expansion coach will ever last almost 2 decades in a first job the way he did in Nashville. And, I know you've been in and around his teams, and he's never had the most talent. It's always been the little engine down in Nashville. And now, they've given him, the royal flush to go work with here at this point in time. And this thing's going to get busted up. I mean, I don't know how they're going to keep the Williams and the Oshies and these guys around, but speak to Barry Trotz and what this third year represents for him, because you've been chronicling this a long time. He's a special guy, but he only becomes a special guy if he holds that trophy at some point, right?
Yeah, there's no question. And it's funny, we talk an awful lot about the Alex Ovechkin era and the disappointments that have happened there. This is the third time the team's been the President's Trophy. You go back to 2010 and they blow a 3-1 lead against Montreal in the first round. I mean, there's always been something that's happened that has been a boulder in the way of this very talented, high-profile team. And, when Barry Trotz came over, I think the feeling was, well, this is it. And he represented a different kind of personality. He represented a different game plan. He would fill in all the holes, and that they would be the team then that would go around or over these boulders in their way. And it hasn't happened that way. They lost the Rangers in a series they should have won 2 years ago. They lose against Pittsburgh last year in a series they never quite got into, right? They were never, I covered that, and I never felt, Caps are on the verge of taking over this series. It never happened. And now we are, third year in, and you're right, talk to Brian McClellan, the GM in Washington. He has, as many as 10 free agents of different stripe, restricted free agents, unrestricted free agents. I mean, you mentioned TJ Oshie, Justin Williams, Carl Alsner, Kevin Shattenkirk, who came over in the big deal at the trade deadline. There's a lot that's going to happen to this team, regardless of how they finish out. But I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to keep players in your stable if you've had a Stanley Cup parade a few weeks before you start talking free agency. So the pressure's on Barry Trotz. He's never been under the second round. He's like Alex Ovechkin, never tasted a conference final battle. And it's amazing to think of, given how well-respected Barry Trotz is, how well-prepared he is. He's considered one of the great coaches of his generation, and yet he's never been where he needs to get to come playoff time. So there's an incredible amount of pressure on him, and the players take their cues from him. And I thought he was very good during the first round. There was never a sort of wobble. There was never a, red-in-the-face kind of, sense behind the bench that he was losing control. The pressure only mounts, right? They're going to play the defending Stanley Cup champions. Mike Sullivan has done an amazing job with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a guy that really redefined that team's culture and identity since coming over a year ago in December. And, the pressure is on Barry Trotz to get the right lineup on the ice and get the right matchups, all those kinds of things. My sense is he relishes this, he knows it's not easy to get to where he wants to go, and I think the players understand that too.
Scott Burnside joining us here. He is ESPN_Burnside out on Twitter as well as at ESPN.com, writing off of all of the games, all of the nights. We're going to go through the other three matchups, but obviously our fascination here. I will be in Pittsburgh for games 3 and 4, broadcasting all week long with Yinzinat up in the Berg, where they win Stanley Cups and they know their way around. Scott, one of the issues here, not only just for Trotz, for Ovechkin, for Backstrom, for Holtby, for all of these guys, is they sort of do look to Justin Williams a little bit, right? They sort of do look to Orpik and some guys that have sort of climbed the mountain. They don't have as many of them, and yet, the Blackhawks took a facer last week. The Kings, not so much, right? So that veteran thing goes away after a period of time, and there's less shine on it, and I know the Penguins have had some injuries as well, but, for the Caps, there's a lot of want, right? I mean, there really is in those beards. They don't know what this tastes like. They only sort of know that bitter pill of disappointment for the most part, and it was really amazing to see Justin Williams become such an incredibly key factor in all of those games, even when he was doing things wrong, like going to the sin bin 3 times in a period.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about the reason that you go out and you sign a Justin Williams and you bring him into a team like the Washington Capitals. It's because he's been there, because he leads by example. And, we talk so much about it in the playoffs. We talk a lot about the Leafs. The Edmonton Oilers, very young, going on to the second round against Anaheim after beating the Stanley Cup finalists from last year in San Jose. And you wonder, do we overstate the experience part of things? I don't think you can. And I think the fact that Justin Williams was the single best or most important player for the Washington Capitals in the first round. I would put him slightly ahead of Braden Holtby. But that line, Justin Williams, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and Marcus Johansson, the best line for either team throughout the series, making pivotal plays at pivotal times. That's why Justin Williams is there. Now, they call him Mr. Game 7. He's won 3 Stanley Cups. He's been a playoff MVP. You don't get to be playoff MVP or do the things that Justin Williams has done if you don't get out of the first round. And so he was pivotal to that. You're right. You mentioned Brooks Orpik, an absolute rock. He's sort of the conscience in that dressing room, I think it's fair to say. Speaks his mind. He's very candid. The experience, you're right, the experience of failure, it's something, you learn from it. But what you don't want to have happen is that the experience of failure becomes your sort of fallback mentality, your fallback identity. And that's something that the Caps have to fight against. They'll have to fight against that in the second round to get to a conference final for the first time since the team went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1998, a series which I covered, it seems like 8 million years ago. And they do it the tough way, right? You're playing the defending Stanley Cup champions, a team that is led by the best player on the planet in Sidney Crosby. Evgeny Malkin had 11 points in 5 games, so he is on fire after being injured down the stretch. I don't care about the injuries there. This Penguins team has got their eye on the prize. No team has repeated since Detroit did it in 97, 98. No
wow, it's been 20 years, right? I mean, that's incredible.
So they get their hands full, and that's why this matchup is going to be so dynamic, I think, is that you've got these sort of two immovable objects. The Caps trying to get where they've never been or haven't been since forever, and the Penguins trying to defy history by becoming the first team to repeat as Stanley Cup champions, because it's so difficult to do. But this Penguins team is definitely poised to make a serious run at it.
The rest of this thing is also a bit of a scramble, right? Like I guess look, I was a Predators fan all those years when Barry Trotz was there from my relationship. I got a closet full of mustard and blue uniforms around here and jersey tops and towels and fang fingers and all that stuff. But to see the Predators just dispatch of the Blackhawks in that way, kind of crazy. And I think some fresh blood here all the way around, and certainly some Canadian interest still looming out west as well, right?
Well, yeah, it is a bit of a topsy-turvy Western Conference, and you alluded briefly to the LA Kings, you get the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, those have been the powers going back the last 7 or 8 years. Of course, the Blackhawks winning 3 cups, Kings winning 2 cups since 2010. Neither of those teams are around, right? Kings going through a huge upheaval after missing the playoffs, and the Blackhawks shockingly swept by Nashville, scored 3 goals in that game. Or in that series, rather, and Dennis Rasmussen had the only even strength goal. So a terrific job done by Peter Laviolette and the Nashville Predators. I know a lot of people didn't like them. I couldn't bring myself to pick Nashville. I thought that they were going to be better than people thought it would be a long series. But and they're facing a St. Louis Blues team is very similar. Both the Preds and the Blues look like they might actually miss the playoffs entirely. Didn't play well for long stretches this year. St. Louis fired Ken Hitchcock on February 1st. Mike Yeo took over and has been absolutely dynamic, tied for the most points in the NHL since Mike Yeo took over. And this series should be great. I like the Predators, very veteran team, and not all that dissimilar from Washington, right? Team never been out of the second round of the playoffs. Went to Game 7 of the second round last year and lost to San Jose. They've got a lot to prove. Pekka Rinne has been dynamic in goal. Jake Allen redefined himself in goal for the St. Louis Blues after having a real crisis of confidence midway through the season. So really terrific series there. And then you mentioned, Edmonton Oilers. I'm so old, I actually covered the last time the Oilers were in the playoffs in 2006 and went to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals before losing to Carolina. And Connor McDavid, that young Edmonton team is, they're where the Leafs will be, I think, in a year or so. But here's that Edmonton knocking on the door, playing a very good Anaheim team, but lots of confidence. And the best young player in the NHL, Connor McDavid, I expect he'll win a Hart Trophy as MVP in a few weeks. And the defending scoring champion, that's going to be a dynamite series because he's going to see a lot of Ryan Kessler, I would think, in the next round. But all those, the two Western series, the four Western teams, it's really, I don't want to say a coin toss necessarily. I think Anaheim's probably a little bit better than the rest, but not by much. And so one of those four teams is going to go to a Stanley Cup final, and I think it's probably a team, at the end of the day, would you have picked them back in September? Probably not. And that's what makes part of this, the playoff process, so dynamic and so much fun.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I was looking down the line at where I might be traveling to because I sort of committed my entire spring to hay fever as well as wherever the Capitals go. And I was looking at pathways, and I really did think it would be Chicago. When I looked at the West, I think if they get to the finals, I expect Chicago to be standing there. They're already gone. I certainly wasn't expecting St. Louis, Nashville, Orange County, or Edmonton to be those choices. But between here and there, obviously 6-7 games with the Penguins, whatever this brawl is going to be over the next 2 weeks. Then there's going to be on the other end Ottawa or the Rangers. But boy, you got to think of the way the Rangers are playing right now and what they did to Carey Price and the way they work the Canadians as well. An Eastern Conference final might go through the Garden again, and for the Capitals, this would involve slaying all of their giants before getting to the Cup, right?
Yeah, no question. And I always feel bad because I still have never given the Ottawa Senators their proper due all season. I still,
and here they are.
Yeah, here they are. You've been misdivided, and good work for Guy Boucher after returning to the NHL as a head coach after spending some time in Switzerland. He's got Mark Crawford, who won a Stanley Cup back in the day with the Colorado Avalanche. But a terrific series from Erik Karlsson, who was playing with hairline fractures in his foot. Craig Anderson in goal, an emotional season for him as his wife has been battling cancer. And Bobby Ryan, terrific renaissance series for him, very disappointing regular season, and he was absolutely electric. And how about Clark MacArthur? Missed most of the last 2 years with concussions. Looked like his career was going to be over, and in fact, some criticism or at least serious concern when he returned to the lineup right at the end of the regular season, heading into the playoffs, and he scores the overtime winner in Game 6 to dispatch the Bruins. So I'm with you. I like the Rangers. I just think Henrik Lundqvist is too good. I like their balance up front, but boy, the Ottawa Senators have no quit in them. And this series, it may be the lowest profile of the 4 second-round series, but it's going to have some drama in it. And the Senators they're going to take a pound of flesh. If they can't defeat the Rangers are going to know they've been in the series by the time it ends. And I look at that as a 6 or 7 game series as well. Scott
Burnside joining us here from ESPN and the worldwide leader. He covers the National Hockey League. Hundreds of thousands follow him, and you can as well at ESPN_Burnside, as well as at ESPN.com. All right, listen, last thing for you here. Trotzy always says these series take a little piece of you, and this is going to be Penguins and Caps. Did the Maple Leafs prime them for this week or wear them out, in your opinion? And how do you think this series is going to go? Where do you expect to be visiting for the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both, but I think it's better. I think this is better for the Washington Capitals. I mean, let's assume, there were a couple of, players that looked a little nicked up after Game 6, but let's assume good health. Carl Alsner looked like he was getting closer to returning. He was participating in all the drills but the penalty kill, so he looks like he's ready to come back. If the Caps are healthy, I think this puts them in a better spot. I think they're in the A level of where the game needs to be, and that wasn't the case last year. So I like them to win this series. It may take 7. I have the Caps winning in 7, and I think it's just their time. And I think Braden Holtby being where he's at right now, just a shade better than Marc-Andre Fleury. It doesn't sound like Matt Murray is anywhere close to coming back. I don't believe he's skated since being injured right before the start, literally in the warm-ups before the start of Game 1. So I give the slight edge to Braden Holtby in goal, and the slight edge is all it may take in what should be a very, very close and emotional series. But I like the Caps to finally break through. I think this is their spring, and I like them to be hosting the New York Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final.
Scott Burnside joining us here. I hope to see you, as Bruce Springsteen would say, further on up the road. And, hopefully the road is long for the Capitals here, and the playoff beards get a little more silver, a little more frost on them here as we get into May and into late May. And at least the Caps made it this far. It's been a great journey, Scott. Enjoy the hockey. Staying up late. I'm brewing coffee every night. I got some specialty coffees and brews around here, and I know you do as well for doubleheaders every night. Enjoy the hockey. Always enjoy your work. And thanks for visiting with us.
Yeah, anytime.
You got it. Scott Burnside covering the National Hockey League out at the worldwide leader at ESPN_Burnside. You can follow me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. Everything we're doing here this week. Capitals, Orioles, Luke's on that. We got the draft on Thursday night, monitoring the Wizards. I'm mixing it all up in there. And you can listen live from anywhere in the world, including Scott's hometown of Atlanta, GA, out in the buyatoyota.com Audio Vault. It's there for you. Our road trips are on sale. Green Bay, Nashville, going to Minnesota. Got some updates and a deluxe package now for London for the September trip as well. It's all up under the road trips tab at WNST.net. $100 off this week and next week. We're trying to incent some folks to getting in and rowing the boat. Come along with us. Green Bay is going to be unbelievable, as is Nashville, and everybody's looking forward to that. The trips are spaced out perfectly. They're a couple of weeks apart. The London thing's nice and early. We've had a head start on that, and the O2 Arena and all the cool stuff we're going to do over there, Abbey Road and the London Eye. Up at the Road Trips tab, if you have any questions or need anything, just email me, nasty@WNST.net. We'll get you taken care of and treated right. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, and getting you ready for the draft on Thursday night. Dennis Kolatzis will be here from 3 until 5 doing the SSV on WNST. And, of course, Coons Ford does sponsor our WNST tech service. This is the best weekend to be on the tech service. I mean, any trades, up, back, forth, all the players as they're drafted, the minute we draft them, you'll get it on the WNST tech service. It's free of charge and powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Reminder, our morning newspaper comes to you at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. Hockey, Orioles, Wizards, NFL drafts, schedule, road trips. We got you covered around here, including the big draft up in Philadelphia this week. I know a lot of folks have said they're taking their family up there. Highly recommend that. It's going to be a big hootenanny. Get yourself a cheesesteak and a pretzel on the way out of that hellhole. Filthy. I'm Nestor. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.